which he later sold to Neiman Marcus. And then, in 2000, he produced the musical that we've all grown very fond of, called Crazy for You. And that won him a Tony Award. He later on produced it in London and won another award for that. Later on, he co-produced the murder mystery musical Curtains and won 8 Tony Awards and 10 Drama Desk Awards. Co-produced a revival of the musical Kiss Me Kate, which he won a Tony Award for Best Musical Revival. So everyone, please put your hands together for Roger Borchow.
Can you hear me? No. Well, with that kind of a introduction, I don't know what's left to say, except I'm really happy that you got to see Crazy for You here. I unfortunately was in New York because I've just produced and opened Annie, and so you should persuade everybody you know to hire a bus and take all of you to New York to see Annie. I'm sure we could arrange that right after we finish here. There's a bus waiting outside, but we really need the business in January and February. Producing is not as glamorous as it might sound. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And so I thought I'd tell you, since you're in are you 8th and 9th grade or 8th? 7th and 8th. Well, you've got it all in front of you, but I was going to go back to when I was in the 1st grade, which is the long path that led me to Crazy for You. When I was 6 years old, we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. My mother was a concert pianist and my dad was a lawyer. And we had this wonderful Steinway piano in our living room. And my mother played all day. She practiced and practiced. And I played chopsticks and whatever the music teacher had me try. And so one night I was asleep, and my mother usually played like Chopin and Bach and, well, those two I remember. And I heard this wonderful different sound. And I mean, I can't tell you the truth that I really remember it perfectly, but I've heard it so many times that I can believe it. They said I came downstairs and playing on that piano was George Gershwin, who wrote all the music that you heard in Crazy for You. So here I was 6 years old, George Gershwin playing my piano. And from that moment on, I was hooked on Gershwin music. And so, you know, when I was little, I'd listen to records. In those days, records were big like this. You put them on a thing and wound this machine and it played. Anyway, I listened to Gershwin for all the time. And, you know, I never really thought much about it, but I liked that music and I liked show tunes. And so then, years later, I went to college in New Haven, Connecticut, Yale. And in those days, before a play came to Broadway, it would try out either in New Haven, Philadelphia, or Boston. And they'd be there for a couple of weeks and iron out the kinks and then move to New York. So when the plays were in New Haven, for $2, I could go sit in the balcony and see practically every play trying out for New York. And that was really fun because I saw South Pacific, and I went over there and watched them in rehearsal, and they didn't care. There was just a student there, so they let me go backstage, and I met Mary Martin, who was the lead, and Ezio Pinza, who's the guy who sang in South Pacific, and met Richard Rogers, and it was really wonderful, and they let me be there. So then, after I graduated from college, I had to go in the Army for 3 years. And after the Army, I went to work in Houston. I worked in the basement of Foley's, which was the old, like Sanger's here anyway. It was a department store. And so that leads in, I'm trying to lead you into the path from your age to my age, how I got in the theater. So I worked there, and then I was hired by Neiman Marcus, and I came here to Dallas. And I worked, and then I started the Horchow collection, as you heard, in 1970. And I sold it in 1988, and I got a huge amount of money. And so after I kept some under the mattress, my wife said, well, what are you going to do now? You know, she didn't want me around the house in the morning. I was supposed to leave to go to work, but I didn't have any place to go. So she said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, what I'd really like to do is to see a Gershwin play on Broadway. And so everybody here in Dallas said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Do it. Laughing and thinking I could not do it. I didn't think I could either. So I contacted a man called Cameron McIntosh in London. He had done Cats and Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera. And I said, why don't you do this Gershwin play? It's called Girl Crazy. It opened in 1934. Is that right, Chuck? 34. And it starred Ethel Merman, who was a great singer, and Ginger Rogers, who later was a big dancer with Fred Astaire. And so it had great music. So I asked Cameron McIntosh if he wanted to produce that, and he said, oh no, I don't do revivals. So someone said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, well, I don't know anything about producing plays, because I was a merchant. So anyway, a friend of mine knew something about the theater, and she said that she'd be happy to spend my money and help me get the play started. So this young woman and I went into business together, and the deal was, I said, look, this is the first and only play I'll ever produce, so I don't care if I lose a whole bunch of money. I set aside, when I reached under the mattress, a certain amount to lose in the play. And what I wanted to do was, I said, I just want it to be the best play we can do, and I don't ever want to be able to sit back and say, oh, if only we had done this, or only we had done that. Let's just go for broke. So we hired the best director, the best choreographer at the time, and the best set designer, and there we were rehearsing, and I didn't know much about it, but I quickly got into it since we were spending a lot of money getting this thing going. And it was really fun, because the role of a producer, when you hear about somebody being a producer, that means that you have to go out and either give the money or raise the money. And so like I produced Annie, which I just told you. I have 20 investors that invest in that. And so the producer then hires the director, and the director is really the boss. You know, I could put up the money, but I wouldn't know who to pick. So for example, on Crazy for You, which many of you have seen, they had these auditions, and we would have these beautiful young women come in, handsome young men, and they could all sing and dance, and I would have picked every one of them. And the choreographer would say, no, I want that one, and that one, and that one. And instead of picking all the prettiest girls or the handsomest young men, there'd be some tall guy and short and fat, every variety. And I said, well, why did you do that? And she said, just wait. So after I saw the production the first time, I realized that these were a bunch of cowboys, and they weren't all going to be the same size and handsome. They were all different sorts. And the chorus girls were all going to be different looking. And so we relied on that, and that was fun to see how they picked the people. Well, Crazy for You, we had a tryout in Washington, D.C., and at that point, we made a lot of changes. For example, in the original Crazy for You, There's one scene when they go to Dead Rock. Well, first, how many of you have seen Crazy for You? Oh, everybody. Well, there's a scene when they go to Dead Rock, and they're trying to figure out a way to sell tickets. And so the director had manufactured a machine, a printing machine where you roll like that and it prints out the stage, what did you call it, the posters. So, and the way it worked is the machine, which cost $28,000, by the way. The guy, Harry, or the leading guy, was go like this and sing a song, and it hit you. As he'd roll it, it hit you. And then the flyer would come out, and it was really bizarre. It never worked. It didn't hit him, or it hit him too hard. One time it knocked him over. And so I watched the $28,000 go down the drain like that. And by the time we left Washington, the machine was put in storage. So that was the first lesson I learned, is don't listen to everybody. And so we had a few other things that also, the play lasted about 20 minutes longer than what you saw. And the Zangler was so popular that he insisted on doing his number about twice. You know, what causes that, and where they mirror each other, the real Zangler and the fake Zangler. Well, he loved it so much he wanted to run it a little bit longer. And then the father, whose part I played later on, the father loved his part so much that he wanted a little extra time. So gradually they cut it all down. So it was really fun, and I have to tell you that the night of the Tony Awards, well, we opened and we got great reviews. Frank Rich, who used to be called the Butcher of Broadway, he was the critic for the New York Times. He could ruin any play by saying lousy, whatever. He wrote this great review, and he said, tonight was the night the Americans captured the musical theater back from the Brits, because they'd had Les Mis and Phantom and so forth. So we got 11 Tony nominations for best everything, costumes, sets, actor, and so forth. And my head began to swell up with great pride. And so it was a wonderful experience, and we actually ran for 4.5 years. So along about the third year, the father was going to take a vacation, and I had seen the play 106 times, so I said, well, I know all the lines. They said, oh yeah, but you've never been on Broadway. And I said, well, we'd save money if you used me. We wouldn't have to pay another actor to play the part. So they said, well, you have to audition. I said, audition? I'm the producer. They said, it doesn't matter. And so I had to audition in front of the choreographer, and they're in the chorus. You'll remember at the end that they all dance a certain way, and you have to kick this way. Well, I'm not that agile. I was stumbling on side by side. So they made a video, and all summer I practiced looking at the video, how my feet are supposed to go. And then there's one scene where the father dances with the leading woman, and they kind of twirl around. Well, it was so bad that my hands got caught, and she was leaning over backwards. I almost knocked her and me over. Eventually, I learned how to do that. And so I had to audition on the singing. The father sings this song, "Things Are Looking Up," and you have to come right in ahead of the orchestra. So I had to stand there and sing that, and then the orchestra came up. And if it wasn't in the right pitch, it wouldn't sound so good. So I got through that. And so I had to dance, do the audition for that. And the lines were easy. So then I'd be backstage, and I was in about 6 scenes. The father came on, and they gave you glasses with the microphone in the back. I mean, most of the people had the ones hooked like here. but they had, on mine were glasses, and so I'd forget to put them on, and I'd be backstage with the stagehands, and they'd put a hook to pull me back in, and they'd say, "You forgot your glasses." So I'd put the glasses on, and behind the stage, I would be on this side of the stage, and there would be these 6 guys sitting there playing cards. On the other side, there were 6 more. And occasionally, they would get up and move a set or do something, and I said, after I got to know them a little better, and I knew their salary, because I looked at the weekly running costs of the play, I said, "What do you guys do together?" Because they'd do one at a time, and the 12 people on the payroll. I said, "Well, what do you do together?" And they said, "We go home." So that was the answer to that payroll. But in general, they're a really nice group. The recasting of the play, you can imagine once you get somebody really good acting in all those roles, and then they leave for one reason or another after a couple of years, you have to recast. And the role of Irene was really, everybody wanted to do that part. And there was this man that I knew who was a big finance guy, not on Broadway, in Wall Street, and he had a wife called Pia Sedora. Has anybody ever heard of her? Well, you don't really want to know too much. But anyway, her husband invited me to lunch, and I thought, well, I didn't know it was her husband, and this guy, his name Mechlin Rickless, he's a big raider. He bought companies and ruined them and so forth. So he invited me to lunch, and he said, "You know, my wife is a really good singer and actress." And, you know, I ate my salad and said, "Well, that's nice." And he said, "You know, she'd really be good in your play." I said, "Oh, well, I'm not the casting director." He said, "Well, I bet you have influence." So anyway, finally, the director, in desperation, I don't know why, but we hired Pia Sedora. And it was kind of the last of the recasting. This was in the 4th year. And so I said, well, it doesn't matter because we probably will be closing in another 6 or 7 months. But there were a lot of funny things about people that would invite you to lunch, and you always knew what the real reason. It's like in the catalog business, which Margaret Ann and I worked together. People would bring this hideous merchandise. It would be like a pot holder that their grandmother made or something like that. They said, oh, and they'd come to the office and they'd start unwrapping all this stuff. And we had this expression, which was the clue. If we didn't want to buy it and we wanted them to leave, we'd say, oh, that's highly unusual. It's really interesting. And so we did the same thing in the theater. We'd say, that was really a great audition. You're really good. You'll hear from us. We didn't say in which century, but they would eventually do. And it was always heartbreaking. I mean, those of you who have auditioned for plays, which I'm sure some of you have, you know, not everybody's going to get the part. So it really kind of hurts your feelings. I'll tell you, away from Crazy for You, for Annie, which is open now on Broadway, we auditioned 5,000 young women. Now that was in person, on YouTube, and through various agents around the country. And that was really heartbreaking that 4,999 didn't get the part. But they all got a certificate saying that they had auditioned for the role of Annie and on Broadway on such and such a date. So they felt pretty good about it. But back to Crazy for You, some of the things that were really innovative. Did you, in your local production, have that car where the girls come out of the car? Well, that was a really expensive thing.
Our version was yours, it was.
Well, ours was really, well, I'm sure. We had to, you know, that 12 of them came out of the car. That was really expensive. So I said, okay, on the car, the machine that punched you in the face, that was kind of bad. But I was going to tell you the worst thing that happened is that when I played Everett, the father, there's a scene where he walks forward with the chair, and he puts the chair on the table, and then another chair on top of that. Did you have that? And so Bobby, they climb up to the top. Well, if I, who was putting the chair on the bottom, didn't put it in the groove, and the other people put the chairs on top, they'd fall over and it'd kill them all, and the play would be over. So I was really nervous. So one day I went there in the afternoon to practice, because you had to walk this way and put the chair in the slot. And I was sure that I'd do it wrong. So I got the chair, and it was dark on the stage, and in the back I heard this yelling at me. He said, "Put that damn thing down." And I kind of said, "Well, who is that?" He said, "I'm the union." And I said, "Well, I don't have anything against unions, but I'm just practicing with my chair. I'm the producer." He said, "I don't care who you are, put the chair down." It appears that in order to be on the stage and even practice, you have to have what they call a work call. And so we had to pay, if they did that, they would have had to turn the lights on and pay the electricians for 8 hours of work. So you can imagine I put the chair down and kind of slumped back home and worried all night. I was sure that I'd kill him the next day. But fortunately, the people in back of me kind of pushed me a little bit so that the chair fit on the table. They got on the top, they sang that, and they left. So that worked out all right. But that was the scariest part of the whole thing. And the only other scary part was in the final scene in the chorus, where they're all across the stage. Everett, the father's at the end. And, you know, if you who dance, if your legs are not all parallel, the guy or the woman doing it wrong stands out. I always stood out. I could hear my wife laughing that my legs were going that way and theirs were going this way. But one night in New York, President Clinton's wife came there, and they had the Secret Service all around her. And it happened, it was the night I was performing, and so all of my friends had come and my children came. And it never really made me nervous to be on stage. I don't know why, but that night I got really nervous because my children were there, not because of Clinton. And so when I came on stage as the father, I could hear this, it was my 3 daughters sitting there laughing. And then my brother-in-law was sitting there in the Secret Service, and everybody clapped when I came on stage because, you know, they all knew me. And the Secret Service said, "Why are they clapping for that old man?" So that was kind of interesting, but I made it through that 8 performances, and it gave me a great appreciation of what it is to be in a play. I mean, you especially when you've got 8 performances a week. Imagine you play Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, Thursday 1, Friday 1, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. And you're really tired. I would come back on Thursday and have to put my feet up for about 5 or 6 hours because it's really tiring, and you have to admire, well, you all know what it was like to both see that and be in plays. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding. And in Broadway, I have to say that it's really, really nice people. And one of the reasons it's nice to work with the actors and actresses is if you're in a business and you're at this level, you may be aspiring to get to be the next level, to be your vice president, you want to be the president. When you're in the theater, once you've been chosen for a part, you're equal to everybody else because you're all in it together. And so you become a family. It's like in your grade at school. Hopefully you kind of bond together. And unlike, well, not all of it, but But in business, I mean in the theater, they're really nice people. And I've done 5 plays. This first was Crazy for You. And I was going to tell you why I did these. I told you Crazy for You was because Gershwin played my piano. So at 6 years old, who would imagine that some act of a guy playing the piano in Cincinnati, Ohio at 11 o'clock at night would lead to me being here talking about Crazy for You at the age of almost 100. So I mean, that's how life is. You just never know what happens from your experience now, whatever happens next. So I did Crazy for You for that reason. And I said, well, I've been a big success, that's all I'm going to do. So it happened that a friend of mine that I'd met who did Guys and Dolls was going to do Kiss Me Kate. And I said, oh, I'd like to go in with you on that. And he said, well, that's nice. I said, because when I was at Yale, I saw Kiss Me Kate. And more than that, the room where Cole Porter, who wrote the music, Cole Porter lived in this room at Yale called 31 Vanderbilt Hall. And I have one of those stupid memories for trivia. I remember that my dad lived in that room. So I looked up in the old yearbook from 1916, my dad's year. Cole Porter was in the class of 1913. So I said, well, my dad lived in that room, should do Kiss Me Kate. So that was a stupid reason that I chose that. And that was a success. Then the next thing I heard is that Kander and Ebb, who wrote the song New York, New York, and Chicago, that they were doing a play called Curtains. Now, I knew nothing about curtains, but I knew about Kander and Ebb. And I thought, well, at Foley's in the basement, my first job out of the Army was ironing curtains. Because I worked for this person, and we sold curtains, and she said, you got to have all these ironed by tomorrow morning. It's Remnant Day. And so I said, well, I can iron. I used to iron my uniform. So there I was ironing. Curtains came along. I said, sign me up because of that. I mean, stupid reasons, but the play worked. Then the fourth one was Gypsy, a revival of Gypsy with Patti LuPone. So I said, oh, I'll do that. Why would you do that? Well, they played that at my wedding. So those are my reasons. And now the last one, Annie, when my youngest daughter was 7, we went to New York and she saw Annie. She came home and she's still singing it. She's 42. Still singing all the time. So when Annie came up, I said, I want to do that. So I encourage all of you to come see Annie in New York whenever you can, especially in the winter, because we need the business in January and February. Can't come this week because we're sold out. But the theater has been a terrific experience, and they always say, well, what did he say when you leave here? Kind of the message is, you never ever can tell what happens in your life starting right now. Some odd thing will lead you to the next step when you're out of school or in the next phase of school. So you just kind of ride with it, and that's what life is about. That who would dream that, in my case, that, as I said, a 6-year-old boy would end up sitting here talking about Crazy for You. So thank you, and I'm perfectly happy to answer all the questions you want to ask, except about tomorrow. Is it today the world's ending, or tomorrow? I can't tell you about that. Thank you. I have questions from anybody?
I ask a question? You didn't mention how Ken Ludwig got involved, because you talked about Girl Crazy and then you're in Crazy for You.
Well, that's a good point. The play Girl Crazy, I got hold of the script, and it was really stupid. The music was great, and so Elizabeth Williams, my partner, and I decided that we had to rewrite it. And so we searched around and we offered it to several people. And this fellow, Ken Ludwig, who wrote Lend Me a Tenor, we interviewed him and we hired him. And so he completely rewrote it. It's a similar plot, but it had different twists, and he had a slightly different sense of humor. And so that's how it happened.
Was that prior to the selection of Susan Stroman to be choreographer?
No, it was, first we hired Mike Cochran to be the director, and then we hired Susan Stroman. All that was contiguous, or at the same time that Ludwig was rewriting it. And that's the other thing you do in previews. You find out when people laugh. You know, some line that you think everybody's going to laugh at. Like there's a line in Crazy for You that said something about standing next to you, and so he moves to the other side. Well, those kinds of things you never know when people are going to laugh. In Annie, there's a scene where Miss Hannigan, are you all familiar with Annie? Have you seen? Well, there's this woman that runs the orphanage, Miss Hannigan, and she's always drunk, and she has a flask, and she's standing there drinking, and this one of the kids, who's about 7, she looks at the child and she said, "Oh, it's just medicine." And then the little child said, "You sure must be sick." And so you never know what's going to get a laugh or not. Yes. Crazy for You. What was it? Was my favorite musical is Crazy for You, really, because I love Gershwin's music, and I just thought that was great.
What was the best experience you had on Broadway?
Dancing and singing in that play. I mean, who would ever think that some old guy would be allowed to be on Broadway? I mean, I'm still waiting. I got a part in a movie recently, but it was just 2 scenes. Yes?
When you were young, were you ever interested in Broadway or acting?
Well, was I ever interested in Broadway and acting? No. I mean, at school, is that the bell? At school, in high school, I played in a play. I had 2 lines. It was called The Hand of Shiva, and I was supposed to say yes and no. That was no, I never thought I would be, but it's again, you just kind of drift into things. Yeah.
What movie?
The movie I was in was called The X-Files, I Want to Believe. So I played the part of elderly gentleman. What else? Yeah. Do I do what? Yeah. You mean at Annie?
No, Crazy for You.
Well, it happens that last Sunday in New York, I received something, an award, and Susan Stroman, who's the choreographer, introduced me, and then David Hyde Pierce, who was in Curtains, he sang Show People. So yeah, I keep up with him. See, yeah.
Do you have anything you regret about your career?
What?
Do you have anything you regret about your career?
Oh, that I regret? I regret that I haven't been cast in some bigger part. Now that I've decided to like to do that. Yes.
What was your favorite scene?
Favorite what?
Scene.
Well, I think the happy scene at the end, you know, where it all kind of came together, that was pretty nice. Although the favorite scene was the most surprising one, when all the pink girls got out of the car. I mean, that was like wonderful. Which job? I'm looking for one. Oh, yeah, I'm happy with it now because Annie is doing well, and we're going to have a tour through the United States, and that'll keep me busy. I mean, when you get old, you have to find work. Yes.
How did you start with this place abroad? Did you know someone?
No, I had invested in a play, this French play, that somebody came to me and said, you know, we're bringing this play and it's called Les Mis. And I said, well, that's French. And they said, oh, we're going to translate it into English. So I made a small investment in that, and that's how I met this woman, Elizabeth Williams, who was on Broadway. So that's how I kind of got into it. Yes.
How much money did you get for being
Over $1 million. Many. Yeah.
What was the most stressful part of being a producer?
The most stressful part is opening night, when you don't know whether they'll like it or not like it. Because, I mean, you love it because it's your play, but Jack knows that you just don't know. And so that's the most stressful and also the most pleasing part, if they clap a lot. Yes, sir.
Whatever happened to the punching machine?
It was thrown away. $28,000 just thrown away. Yeah.
What exactly was the Horseshoe collection?
It was a Horseshoe collection was a catalog that was not related to any store. It was only through the mail, and it still exists. And it sold, at the time I started it, it sold everything that anybody would want, like clothing, furniture, not furniture, but things for your house, jewelry, anything anybody wanted. And it worked well. Now it's still going, but it's changed a lot. And my daughter Sally, the young daughter who went to Annie, has been hired by them to kind of help spruce it up. Yes.
What was the most difficult part about producing Crazy for You?
The most difficult part about producing Crazy for You was, I think, for me, it was not knowing. You know, I was too dumb. I didn't know all the questions to ask, and a lot of things kind of slid by, like that machine. Had I been more forceful and said, well, couldn't we live without that expense? And just the question about advertising, how much to spend, on whether you have a newspaper ad, the side of a bus. Now, like with Annie, we're on the top of the taxi cabs. How much to spend? That's really stressful, and I didn't know. Yes.
How old were you when you first started producing?
I was 62, I think, like that. About 62. Yes.
If you could have had another job, what would it have been?
My next job,
Another job. If you could have had another job, what would you have?
I don't know, because I just kind of drifted in, you know. Drifted into retailing and drifted into the theater. And now I'm hoping to drift into the movies. The guy who wrote the X-Files has just written a new series for HBO about the Salem witches, and I'm asking him what my part will be, but he said, well, if you want a part, you have to come to Hollywood every week to film. I said, no, I can't do that. So he said, well, maybe I'll write you in as a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who just kind of appears every now and then. So I'll let you know. Yes. Would I what? No, I wasn't serious. That's a figure of speech about putting your money under the mattress. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I have a question back there in the balcony. No? Anybody else? Yes? How long?
How long did it take?
How long?
How long did it take to produce the play?
Well, Crazy for You started in 2 years before we actually hit the stage. It took 2 years to hire everybody and raise the money and get everything going and find a theater. That's one thing that people don't realize, is that there are only about 30 theaters, and it's hard to get one. We had, for Annie, we had to wait till Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, finally folded up, and we got that. Yeah.
How long did it take to produce Annie?
Annie's taken over 2 years because we had to get the rights. It used to be a comic strip, and we had to get the rights from the syndicate, King Features, and then we had to find a theater, and we had to cast. It took 2 years. Yes. I think my family. I have three terrific. Well, I have three terrific daughters, and my wife who passed away was equally terrific. And I have 5 grandchildren. I didn't say they were all terrific, but I said I have 5. Yes.
Do you know if David Actor does any plays?
David Hyde Pierce was my favorite. He was in Curtains, and you might have seen him as Niles in
Fraser.
Fraser. Yeah. He's a really nice guy. And he's just directing a play now. He's actually acting in one, but he's also written one. Yes.
Should any of your daughters follow in your footsteps?
Well, Sally, my youngest one, the one that sang Annie, is a co-producer of Annie. And now she's got the bug, and she's going to London next week to see a Whitney Houston play based on her music, and which is not of any interest to me, but my daughter Sally is very excited, and she and this Mr. Niederlander who owns the theaters, she's interested. So yes, that one has the bug. The grandchildren, I have one granddaughter who just is a freshman in college. She's an improv actor, and she sings, and the other granddaughter is a sophomore at college, and she's produced Spring Awakening at college. So yeah, they're getting the bug. Yes.
How much money did you make?
How much money did I make? Well, I would say I got all my money back that I put into the play, and I paid all my investors back, and then they made their profit, and we all made double what we put in. So that's why I can take the morning off and come here and buy a new What? How much money was that? Well, it cost $7.5 million to raise the curtain. So that's another thing that people don't realize, that it costs all the money just to raise the curtain. Jack knows so well. And then once you've done that, you have, every week you have this cost. Yes.
Since you have experience with Broadway, what's some advice you would give someone who is interested in being part of?
Well, to get to Broadway, you've got to apprentice here. You've got to go out for everything you can in school, and then local productions, because in order, in many cases, to even audition on Broadway, you need to get an equity card, and the only way you do that is to keep apprenticing locally.
What's the best advice you give to any artist?
To do what?
Any advice to give this age group?
Any advice is to believe in your own ideas, and don't let too many people tell you it won't work, because they told me the catalog wouldn't work. Stanley Marcus, who ran Neiman Marcus, when I told him I was going to start my own catalog, he said, well, who would buy from a catalog named Horchow? Well, they did. And when they said, well, he called me up and said, I hear you're going to produce a play called Crazy for You. What do you know about the theater? The advice is, follow your own heart, and don't look to the right and the left. Just keep going.
I need Mr. Horchow to stay here for just a minute. I have 3 students who want to perform. Ruby, come on up. Here. 1 minute monologue. And this is Ruby's original monologue.
The name of my monologue is God's Colors. God's Colors. They call me crazy. I am. When I start to paint, I can't help but fall in love with the colors. As my brush makes smooth strokes across the canvas, I imagine myself as a color. When I'm feeling depressed, I plunge my brush into a bucket of paint and imagine myself as the sun, warm, glowing, happy. Colors transport you to places where you haven't been before. Red, in love, blue, calm and cool as a shining ocean. I love my colors. They're mine. And they all work together to make something beautiful. Now I know you think I'm crazy. I know you do. But at the end of the day, when my painting is done, you realize that you can't live without it.
This is Catherine Patillo.
Okay, so I'm going to be performing an excerpt from the play A Young Lady of Property by the Texan playwright Horton Foote. Wilma, I have to tell you something. Well, promise you won't hate me or stop being my friend. I never had a friend before you began being nice to me, and I couldn't stand it if you weren't my friend any longer. Well, I don't want to go see Mr. De La Font. I don't want to be a movie star. I don't want to leave Harrison or my mother or father. I just want to stay here for the rest of my life and get married and settle down and have children. The only reason I said I wanted to go to Hollywood was because I knew you wanted me to, and I wanted you to like me. Don't hate me, Wilma. The truth is, I would die if I had to go see Mr. De La Font. Why, I even get faint when I have to recite before the class. I'm not like you, Wilma. You're not afraid of anything.
I will be performing an excerpt from the play Crazy for You. In this scene, Bobby Child has just received a telegram from his mother. I'll bet it's from Mother again. That's just what I need right now. Dear Fathead, stop. Yup, it's Mom. Stop this nonsense. Stop. This is your final notice. Stop. Sounds like an electric bill. Get back here on next train. Stop. We'll stop allowance if you stop. Stop. Your loving mother. Stop. P.S. Your uncle stopped by. I wish you'd write letters.
I want to recognize some guests that we have here today, and then we have a special presentation for Mr. Horchow from the students. I'd like to start with, we cannot do anything without the people who came today. The parents are here, and I'm going to go through everyone right now for just a minute, and you just have to be patient. I need Margaret Ann Cullum and Joanna Pistema to stand up. They are responsible for everything we do at the Dallas Museum of Art, and they go with us to all the plays at Jack's at Theater 3. And they are so supportive of all the students up here. Jack, I need you to stand up. Jack Alder is the artistic director, as you all know, of Theater 3. We go to all of his performances every year, and he has it so all of the students have a chance to see Crazy for You or any other production. We took 162 students to see 2 performances of Crazy for You, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Jack gives us reduced rates, or we couldn't go. And Jack, we love you. The next person is Liz Gallego. Liz Gallego. Liz is the head dance and theater for the entire school district, and she is very supportive. She goes with us to certain situations, certain plays. We're all going to Irma P. Hall to be with her. So we have a great time. I think we're taking 25 of you there for the competition, and it's great, great fun. Next, of course, I need the parents to stand up. Parents! 8 chaperones who go with me to all performances, and they do this just because they love us, and we're very blessed to have them. We also have a supportive staff here. I need Mary Smith to stand up. Mary Smith. We could not do any of this without our principal. Let me tell you one thing that she taught me 13 years ago, and I want you to know this, that there are no acquaintances in life. There are no acquaintances. Everyone you meet is your friend. Everyone you meet has the potential to be your friend. I mean, I look around at all of you. You're either my family, I'm drama mama, so you're my family. And you're also, the teachers here are not only just teachers, they are friends and co-workers and loving, supportive people. They go as chaperones to the plays. If I need a student to get out and rehearse something, they go, you can have them later. You can have them and then have them come to my class during your class. So that is what this school consists of. It consists of people who all love each other. And isn't that fantastic? Okay, well, before I get emotional, I need my students to come up. Come up with a card too, Catherine. Yes, this is all for Roger. They went out and shopped for this, and you have to take it out. It's for your New York nights and days. Maybe Dallas.
Christmas is early.
It is. And Catherine, do you want to present the card? Sophia made it.
Look at this, all these signatures. I'm going to take it to the bank.
Mr. Horchild, you'll be our friend for life, and we really mean that. We just think you're terrific, and to take time out of your hectic schedule, and all of you who came, I will love you for eternity for doing all of this, and Roger, we will love you for eternity. That's a long time. And we'll party if the end of the world ends tomorrow, and we'll party if it continues.